Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. This is Bill's hot takes on current events. And Bill's surprising story today, Chris Pratt, the famous Hollywood actor, had a quote in an Associated Press interview, which I saw covered in People magazine, that seemed to run counter to everything I've heard before. And I want to read this quote to you exactly and get your reaction to it. Chris Pratt now says, Jurassic World, Avengers Infinity War, what's the other one? Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes. Chris Pratt says, quote, "I think that there's this narrative that exists out there that Hollywood is anti-Christian or anti-religious, but it's just not the case," Pratt said. "They are kind of not anti-anything. They're kind of pro whatever is authentic to you. And I like that because it's authentic for me to be pro-Christian and pro-Jesus. That's my thing. I like it." Bill Whittle, first of all, just your immediate reaction. Does that surprise you to hear a Jesus-loving Christian say that he doesn't think that there's anti-Christian bias in Hollywood?
Well, there's good news and bad news in this. When you told me that Chris Pratt had made an unexpected statement, I thought, this is going to make me cry, like a little girl, because I really like Chris Pratt. We have an expression out here, Scotty. When somebody becomes powerful enough, they're referred. It's probably not unique to show business, but when they become powerful enough, they're referred to as a force of nature. And a great example of that is Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is a force of nature. You can't do anything to Clint Eastwood or Tom Cruise. Their careers are not affected by publicity. They're not affected by, they're legends. And there are a few people that are in that level. And Chris Pratt, I think, is there now early, because he seems to be the most popular actor in America, and I'm very happy about that because I like him very much. The thing about what you said was, the reason I bring up force of nature is, I was cringing to hear something like, this America First thing is terrible. We're no better than any other country. We're not. I was expecting to hear the standard left-wing tripe, and that's not what Chris Pratt said. What he said was he didn't see any anti-Christian bias in Hollywood, and he probably doesn't because he's Chris Pratt.
Now, I will add to that, just to buttress what you're saying, Bill. He also said, "I've never had anyone try to shame me to my face. Maybe they go say it behind my back, but if that's the case, go ahead. You can say whatever you want about me to my face or behind my back. I'm not going to change."
Well, first of all, good for him. And it may come as a continuing shock to people who don't live here. And I mean this, it's going to be very shocking for average Americans to believe when I tell you that just that statement takes a fair amount of courage from Chris Pratt. A fair amount of courage. I don't mean the same kind of courage that our soldiers show under fire, but moral courage, because Chris Pratt has already paid a pretty big price for, didn't he wished some rapper, God bless you or something, and then the entire universe came down on him. How dare you invoke, what about the separation of church and Hollywood that Thomas Jefferson wrote about in the Constitution? So any kind of a statement that's not a left-wing statement is interesting, and something that says, I'm a Christian and I'm proud of it, is a beacon of integrity and courage and honor and all the rest of it. When he says they may be saying things like this behind my back, they are. Chris, you bless your heart. Chris Pratt is an exceedingly popular actor because he seems like a nice guy. And everything I've heard about him and everything I've read about him tells me that that's because he is a nice guy. And I'm glad that what you came at me with was not something that changed my opinion of him being a nice guy. He may be such a nice guy that it's not a question of him being nice, Scott. Chris Pratt is the most popular actor in Hollywood right now. And when you're the most popular actor in Hollywood, you're a force of nature. You can say whatever you want to say. But without question, an anti-conservative bias, anti-religious bias exists. And I can tell you thousands of people who I've met personally, thousands, I'm not exaggerating, who have told me again and again and again, if I say I'm a Republican or a conservative, I'm fired, I'll never get hired again. Somebody found out I was a conservative on Facebook and I haven't had a job since then. It is the most fascistic, intimidating, un-American atmosphere in America. But that doesn't surprise me because this is the only place where gravity is inverted and things fail upwards in this town.
Well, let me give you one more little quote from Chris here because he spoke. He received the MTV Generation Award and caused quite a stir on YouTube anyway when he said things like this in his acceptance speech: "God is real. God loves you. People will tell you that you're perfect just the way you are. You are not. You are imperfect." He goes on to say there's a powerful force that designed you. He says grace is a gift, like the freedom that we enjoy in this country. That grace was paid for with somebody else's blood. He said this at the MTV Generation Awards. Now, Bill, when I read this and I hear Chris Pratt saying basically, hey, I am who I am, and that's all they care about, authenticity in Hollywood, I begin to wonder whether some of us Christians and some of us conservatives, and not to mix the two too much, but are simply afflicted with whiner's disease, where we constantly feel like we're besieged and beleaguered, when in fact nobody really cares that much, and we should just be bold and be ourselves.
You're constantly talking about whiner's disease, Scott. Always. You're always talking. It's just one thing. Whiner's disease. No, this is not an imaginary phenomenon, and it's not a trivial phenomenon. It's not whiner's disease. This is like the people when the left says that conservatives are whining about being discriminated against in Hollywood. It's kind of like that, horrible Big Brother that you've read about or seen in movies. Usually played by someone named Buzz or Skip, and they're poking you. You turn around and hit him, and it's like, Mom, why did Jimmy just hit me? So I'm not buying that whining argument for a second. But I'll tell you what that quote from MTV Music Awards did do for me just now. It made it clear why Chris Pratt had the courage to say what he said later in the quote that you began with. He's not afraid of what people say because he's an actual Christian who has an actual religion, and his entire universe does not revolve around the table he gets at Le Dome, or more. Well, it used to be Morton's 100 years ago. He's not owned by the Hollywood system. He's owned by a higher power than studio executives. And so I now, after rehearing what he said at MTV and just hearing them, not by him, hearing how revolutionary they are for this town in this age, I realized that his courage comes from his convictions, and that I strongly believe that Chris Pratt is the kind of guy, and this is very, very unusual out here, very unusual out here. He strikes me as the kind of guy that does not need applause mainlined into his veins in order to be able to function on a daily basis.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Whittle Now is Bill's hot takes on current events. And if you like this kind of content, first of all, make sure you don't miss an episode by clicking that notification bell right there on YouTube. Then come over and join us at BillWhittle.com. Become a citizen producer there so you can help produce this kind of content. And of course, we love it when you like and share and follow and do all that other kind of fun stuff on social media. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.